Hey, how you guys doing?
What's going on, Matt? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. For those that are regular listeners, Matt is also a regular on the show. He was on in the very beginning and more recently and continues to build. I'm sure there's a lot you could relate to in terms of what James was saying about the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's been, gut punch after gut punch, I think, for so many of us in the space this year. And I was listening along to everything you're saying, James, and just nodding like, yeah, yeah. But look, I'm really glad that you're still here and that people as talented as you are still here and really sort of see the future in Web3. I think, this was the after the dot-com crash, like after a lot of waves like this in tech, the mainstream media is kind of pointing their fingers and saying, see, it was all just a load of rubbish. But that's not been true once in the history of technology. And there's so many applications and there's so many people building amazing things. And yes, speculation distorts everything we're doing. But yeah, like I've still, I'm just nothing but bullish when I see people like James and his team building amazing things.
Well, you're also doing some amazing building. So let's sort of give your formal background and talk a little bit about what you're up to. For those that don't know Matt, he's a senior executive with almost 20 years of experience in marketing strategy, product management, content creation, including a decade at C-level in distributed tech and Web3. He's also the CEO and co-founder of Dazzleship, which is a metaverse innovation lab, and he's the creator of Web3 franchise Broadside. And you guys should check out Broadside. It's one of the most engaged communities and visited destinations in the open metaverse. And the community has paid to mint over 50,000 NFTs with $2.3 million in sales volume. And they've partnered with brands like Beatport, OpenSea, Rarible, Pixel Links, among many others. And it also turns out that Matt and James have a common background that neither of them talk about too often, but you guys were both hanging out at Kraken in a few years back.
Yeah, both former Krakenites. I was CMO there for a spell, and James was on the engineering team. So yeah, it's good to see the class for
So,
Kraken.
so,
Central.
so I'm kind of curious, is the marketing team coming up all these ideas and the engineering team is saying like, no way, we can't do that.
Sometimes, actually, you know what? So much of my career it's been the opposite, where I've like walked in one morning and the engineering team said, "Oh, we built a thing and we put it online, and we didn't tell anyone in marketing." I was like,
J
"Wait, what is that?"
James, what
Yeah.
what what side of the coin did you fall on, man? Tell us the truth.
Yeah, I'd say it was kind of the opposite for me. It was more or less like, hey, you need to do this. Like, we need this built out. Like, unrealistic timelines. But it all worked out for the best. I think like, luckily, like I'd say the team that I worked with was very harmonious. So we're very much in the know of what needed to happen. Luckily, never walked in of like, okay, this is the whole pivot. This is what you need to do now. Throw out all the old code. So yeah, it was a very harmonious relationship, and I'd say yeah, the culture at Kraken is just amazing. So it's definitely one of the favorite places I worked in. I think it was like the right stepping stone into Web3 full time for me.
Right on, right on. Well, we brought Matt to share some big news about another new road in Web3 that he's been driving down. So the question is, Matt, what was it like to take Counting Crows on the road? No, just kidding. Uh, that would be a cool question, but no, seriously, what's the big news, man? That you're able to share with us?
Yeah, wait, did you know I did an album with Counting Crows at BitTorrent? I was like, I've actually done that, but never
I
mind. There's another
Yeah, no,
whole
no,
other story.
I know. That's why I
Oh,
mentioned
okay.
it.
Okay. I was like, wait, what?
Hey, I did my research,
I've
man.
forgotten about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, so look, it's
that's
been
a
oh
fun fact for a bar for sure.
yeah. We'll get into that. We'll get into that at some point. Yeah, it's been, almost a year since we launched Broadside. And we've sort of two things have happened. One, we've done everything we said we were going to do and more, despite the bear market and despite everything. And two, I guess not a big surprise. This happens a lot in Web3 and communities generally. Our community took the project in a completely different direction And so now we're also kind of, we're trying to build for where they're going as well. Broadside started as a storytelling project using NFTs, NFT characters as the stars of the story. So the way it works is you could buy a Broadside character. It has a name. It's like a 1-of-1 3D avatar from over 3,000 traits. I think it's the most traits on any collection in OpenSea. It broke up, tens of thousands of episodes to our holders of this story about their character over the last 10 months. And then over the summer, we gave everybody who collected the full story the opportunity to merge and bind the episodes of the story into a 1-of-1 Broadside book with your hero on the cover, with your hero named as the main character throughout. And like we thought in this market, we wouldn't get that many people doing it. We thought maybe 1,000 or so would do it. Over 3,000 people actually created one of these first edition Broadside books, which is pretty mad. Like I used to run a gaming studio. Like I think a lot about retention as a big sort of marker for the health of a community. Like we minted 7,200 heroes, and 3,000 of them stuck around for 10 months paying for episodes and then paid to merge and bind a book, which is a crazy metric in terms of engagement and health of a community. And so we were sort of really inspired by that. Along the way, we met a platform called book.io, really amazing team of people backed by Penguin Random House and a few other big media players who are building an ebook marketplace where every ebook is an NFT, is a fully ownable asset built on the blockchain. They've sold over 160,000 ebook NFTs in the last year, which is astonishing in this market. And they're really, I think, one of the companies that is managing to kind of pierce the Web3 bubble and get to a new audience and show them an application for NFTs that matters to them. So we were really excited to meet them, and we've partnered with them on the first edition of the Broadside book that isn't completely unique. So we're calling it the collector's edition. The hero will have one name throughout. And we asked everybody who created the first edition, we asked them to give us their PFP, which they own the rights to, and to write a little message, kind of like a yearbook. And we created this 300-page section that's going to be in the collector's edition with everybody in the Broadside community who contributed and merged and bound their book is featured in this collector's edition. And in return, because they own the IP rights to their Broadsiders, we're sharing 30% of the royalties with them. And we're doing this because we think, this is both Vector, my co-founder, and I, we come from sort of a long history in content creation. And we're looking at all these models kind of break down, and we're looking at studios and labels and all these platforms consolidate. And one of the things we love about Web3 is you can involve your community and you can collaborate with them, and you can let them share in the upside of working together if they're actually creating stuff with you. And this just made so much sense to us. Like my first book, which I published with Simon & Schuster and 10 other countries, I licensed a lot of content from people, excerpts from other book, photos. It's a really simple model. If you're using a photo, ask permission, sign a contract, and then pay the photographer. So that's what we did here. Like our Broadside community, they own all their rights. So we asked for their permission, they signed a contract, and we're taking their work and we're publishing it and we're paying them for it. So it's not a security, or at least our legal team assures us it probably isn't a security. But we really want to keep pushing, despite where the SEC is going, despite all this FUD, like we owe it to content creators to come up with new models. We owe it to fans to come up with new ways to kind of include in the process of building franchises. So
yeah,
we're really to do that.
I gotta just say, Rich, I know you had a question, but I just gotta say kudos to you, Matt, for doing something that sort of touches the R word that is so sort of trepidatious right now in a creative way, and trying to find the winning strategy here. I don't want to say loophole, but the strategy that actually sort of checks the right boxes and makes everyone happy, because a lot of people would just like not go down that road at all. but you didn't. And I see James nodding his head as well. I'm sure James, as a product developer, you appreciate what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Matt just mentioned, in Web3, it seems like there's not enough projects, businesses that give back. And I think when you can nail down a model that where incentives align, not only with, the project, the business, the founders, and also the community, I think that's kind of a home run. And I think so many projects, so many businesses kind of shy away from it, right? Like granted, all this stuff that's going on with the SEC is what it is, but there's still so many routes you can take forward that kind of align with giving back. And I think not enough people in the space give back, because when truly give back to your community, that's really when they're excited again, like you mentioned, to come back every day, right? And I think that's like a model that just I'm imagining that you didn't have this like this revenue giving back model, at least at first, and after you unrolled it, your community was very excited.
Yeah, we it wasn't something we thought about when we launched necessarily. Like definitely sort of aspirationally, we were thinking, how do we get to models like this? But we were, again, in the interests of trying to follow, the SEC's guidelines, which are, regulation by enforcement, and looking at decisions like Stoner Cats. So, okay, well,
what guidelines? I mean, that's the problem.
Right. There's no guidelines. And there, I mean, the one thing we sort of looked at was, don't, or sort of the Howey test, sorry, for securities law is, I'm trying to remember the analog for it. Like, if you're saying you're going to build a golf course and you haven't built it yet, but you're raising funds to do it, then the thing you're selling, the memberships to the golf course, are securities. If the golf course exists, it's not a security. So don't say anything or don't announce anything until you've actually done it. So we worked for months with our legal team, with our smart contracts team, to really get this structure right. And we waited until the merge and bind process was ending before we announced that we were doing this 30% royalty. We didn't want to kind of tip our hands that there was any other reason to go and get one of these books other than you were, a diehard fan of Broadside and you'd been along for the journey. Like, that was reward enough. And we wanted this to be a kind of surprise and a cherry on top. Not just because that was the right thing to do from a securities law POV, but because it just felt like the right way to reward people who are really here. And, we've worked really hard to keep flippers out, for the whole project. We've sort of, I think 98% of people have not listed their Broadsiders for sale, and they've just been here with us, which is really amazing. And excited to do this collector's edition with book.io. We've got 2,000 collector copies that will hopefully mostly go to 2,000 new collectors at a different price point, $45 or 90 Matic. So yeah, like pushing the story and expanding this story to a wider Web3 audience is something we're looking at too. Like, which is, again, it's hard, right? Like, how do you take care of your core community and how do you keep growing the franchise? Is a lot of people are struggling with this in Web3, and we've seen, what Luca Nets is doing at Pudgies, as you guys were talking about, like amazing use of blockchain and plush toys, and doesn't impact holders. Like, thinking about those type of models, and thinking about how do you create new stuff, which doesn't.
Let's dive deeper into that real quick, because like you talked about at the top of the conversation how you have the stickiness, you have people who are coming and they're staying. So there's something there. So then I like to think that there's a lot of people who like to be creative in their own ways, but also want to have some in product or in thing that they can point back to and say, hey, I contributed to this thing, here it is, and now other people are enjoying the fruits of that. So like, walk us through that, right? So if me, Josh, and Groovy come together and look at one of these, it's like, we want to contribute, we want to potentially like participate, that like, what does that look like?
What does it look in terms of sort of the flow in Broadside? What does it look like? Yeah, so I mean, if you have a Broadsider, you get these episodes, you're able to merge and burn them and create a book. We've actually closed the merge and burn process now, so people couldn't do it once we announced the royalty thing. But we built the royalty system so that we can and will use it again. And we built it in such a way that, this deal we've done with book.io is the first book deal we've done on Broadside. We're going to do a lot of deals and eventually get to kind of the physical paper version for general release at some point. And we tried to structure this royalty system in such a way that it's very easy for a big publisher to look at this and say, oh, okay, like we don't actually have to be involved in it, and you're just licensing content from someone like we normally would from a photographer or a writer. So we wanted to make it very easy for publishers or studios or anyone working with us. And then on the other side, for our core community, we can always implement this royalty model where appropriate if our, the partner we're publishing with is comfortable with it, in such a way that it's just a nice surprise for holders. And when, we're going to use it again in different ways for people as we bring more people into the project. I guess one thing, like, this tension between your core community, they don't ever want you to make any more NFTs. They want you to go and, sell soft toys in Walmart or wherever it is, because then the value of their NFTs goes up. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, except for the fact that I happen to love NFTs. I love them as network-aware social objects. And I don't think we've really shown anyone the magic of these things yet. And so we're sort of, for the next phase of Broadside, with this community being so engaged in the metaverse, we're building metaverse tools and products, and this new platform that we're launching beginning of 2024. And there will be new NFTs, and they're very different from the OG collection. But I'm not going to apologize for that, and I'm never going to stop making NFTs as long as I'm in this space, because I think they're magic. And I think the idea of objects and avatars that can travel across the 100,000 plus Web3 games and open metaverse world that exist today, taking different objects into different environments that have different utility in different environments, adding in, real-time AI voice and all of these other bells and whistles that we're seeing emerge. Like, we're going to see something built on the metaverse that looks like gaming, but is very, very much more sort of, as Fortnite becomes a platform and Roblox becomes a platform and Apple drives more value to the avatar level, you're going to see these weird composable communities that are just running around the next layer of the internet. And it's all going to, blockchain's the only thing that makes that work. And there's going to be millions of people doing this. So I think long-term, the only model for, like, you've got issue one of something is it's not making more NFTs. Like, NFTs are going to have to follow the sort of Pokemon model, where it's like old school one-of-one Pokemons. The first ones are really valuable because there are billions of them. And that's the only sustainable model. But, like, getting from here to there is the tricky part, because you've got to bring your community with you.
Well, I think you bring on some interesting points, right? I think creating more NFTs, saturation only becomes a problem if there's no underlying use case or underlying utility, right? And it sounds like you already have a lot baked in and the things that you want to do with these extra NFTs. And I think that's kind of the only issue is when saturation is an issue, is, like, again, if there's just no basis for why you're actually creating these. And it sounds like you have a lot planned. So I think that's the better approach, as opposed to just like, we're not creating any more NFTs, is very different from, we're creating NFTs that actually have a specific purpose and their own value proposition. I think, again, that's the best path forward.
For sure, man. Well, congrats again on the big news and continuing to break new ground. As always, sure you'll have more exciting news for us next time you're on. And in the meantime, folks, go to at Dazzleship on Twitter or at Broadside NFT on Twitter to sort of start to dive down that rabbit hole more and find out more about what's going on in the world of Matt Mason and all his Web3 adventures. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, man.
The views and opinions expressed on Edge of NFT reflect solely those views and opinions of the show hosts and its guests. Please make sure to do your own research. Our show is not financial advice. You understand that you are using any and all information available on or through this podcast at your own risk. Whenever making financial decisions, we recommend doing your own research and talking to your accountant for financial advice. From time to time, we may feature sponsored content on the show for which we receive value, and we may share links for which we receive a commission if you make a purchase through one of those links. Refer to our website, www.edgeofnft.com, for our full disclaimer, terms and conditions, and privacy policy.